In the neon haze of the 1960s, not every film found its audience. Some were too strange, too bold, or too ahead of their time. Yet decades later, these forgotten reels became treasures for devoted cinephiles. These are the cult 60s movies only true fans know, and they're nothing like you expect. 1. The Trip, 1967. When Roger Corman decided to make The Trip, Hollywood was still figuring out how to portray the counterculture. Written by Jack Nicholson and starring Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, and Susan Strasberg, it was a daring dive into the LSD experience, at a time when the drug was still legal in California. Corman, known for his low-budget ingenuity, took cameras into real nightclubs, beaches, and streets of Los Angeles, blending kaleidoscopic visuals with pulsating music. The story follows a disillusioned TV director, Fonda, who turns to psychedelics to find meaning, guided by a trip sitter, played by Bruce Dern. What set it apart wasn't just the subject matter, but its surreal editing, quick cuts, warped lenses, and dreamlike color filters simulating hallucinations. Upon release, The Trip was both scandalous and irresistible to the young. Critics were divided, with some calling it irresponsible, and others praising its energy. But it paved the way for Easy Rider, reuniting Fonda and Hopper in another countercultural landmark. Over time, The Trip became a time capsule of late 60s Los Angeles, complete with its fashion, music, and sense of rebellion. To modern viewers, it's both a psychedelic ride and a portrait of a generation teetering between liberation and chaos. 2. Petulia, 1968. Richard Lester, fresh off directing The Beatles in A Hard Day's Night, turned to something darker with Petulia. Set in San Francisco, the film follows Julie Christie as the enigmatic young wife of a wealthy man, who begins an affair with a recently divorced doctor, George C. Scott. But this isn't a straightforward romance. It's a fractured, non-linear exploration of disillusionment in the 1960s. The film's structure was bold for its time, using jump cuts, flash forwards, and fragmented storytelling to reflect the emotional turbulence of its characters. Lester's direction captures the city's countercultural energy while revealing the cracks beneath the flower power facade. When it debuted, many viewers were baffled by its unconventional style, but critics like Pauline Kael recognized its brilliance. Today, Petulia stands as a haunting chronicle of an era's uncertainty, pairing Christie's ethereal charm with Scott's weary gravitas. Its melancholy tone and avant-garde editing make it one of the most distinctive American films of the decade. 3. Point Blank, 1967. Before John Boorman became known for Deliverance and Excalibur, he made Point Blank, a revenge thriller unlike anything else in the genre. Lee Marvin plays Walker, a criminal betrayed by his partners and left for dead. The film's premise is simple, but its execution is dreamlike, blending non-linear timelines, sudden flashbacks, and minimalist dialogue. Boorman turned a standard crime novel, The Hunter by Donald E. Westlake, into an abstract study of isolation and betrayal. The stark cinematography and haunting score give the film an almost existential feel, while Marvin's stoic performance anchors it in raw human emotion. Though initially overlooked in the U.S., it became a critical darling in Europe, and later gained cult status for its influence on directors like Quentin Tarantino and Steven Soderbergh. For modern fans, it's a masterclass in style, proving that crime thrillers can be as poetic as they are brutal. 4. Chimes at Midnight, 1965. Orson Welles called Chimes at Midnight his favorite of his own films, and for good reason. This Shakespearean collage stitches together parts of Henry IV, Henry V, Richard II, and The Merry Wives of Windsor, centering on the larger-than-life character Sir John Falstaff. Wells, both directing and starring, turns Falstaff into a tragic-comic figure caught between loyalty and betrayal. Shot in Spain on a shoestring budget, the film was plagued by technical and financial hurdles. Yet its medieval battle sequences, especially the Battle of Shrewsbury, remain some of the most visceral ever filmed. Wells's love for the material radiates through every frame, blending humor, melancholy, and grandeur. For decades, Chimes at Midnight was almost impossible to see due to rights issues fueling its cult mystique. Now restored, it's celebrated as one of the greatest Shakespeare adaptations ever committed to film. 5. The Saragossa Manuscript, 1965. This Polish epic from director Wojciech Has is unlike anything else in cinema. Based on an 1815 novel, the Saragossa Manuscript weaves a labyrinth of stories within stories, as a soldier in the Napoleonic Wars discovers a mysterious book. Each tale leads to another: ghost stories, romantic intrigues, philosophical debates, blurring the lines between reality and fantasy. Its dreamlike structure captivated fans like Luis Buñuel and Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, who helped finance its restoration. Initially baffling to mainstream audiences, it became a cult treasure for its surreal imagery, complex narrative, and hypnotic pacing. Watching the Saragossa Manuscript is like wandering through a vast, enchanted library, one where every book leads to a stranger world than the last. It's a film for viewers who relish getting lost in a maze of imagination. 6. Seconds, 1966. John Frankenheimer's Seconds is one of the most unsettling science fiction films of the 1960s, and perhaps one of the most underrated. It tells the story of Arthur Hamilton, a middle-aged banker living a dull, lifeless existence. Approached by a mysterious organization, he's offered a chance to start over, a new face, a new identity, and a second chance at life. After undergoing radical surgery, he emerges as a handsome younger man with a fresh identity as an artist named Antiochus Wilson. On the surface, it's a seductive fantasy, the ultimate do-over. But as the story unfolds, the dream curdles into a nightmare. The new life is hollow, the relationships artificial, and the past impossible to erase. Hudson's performance is extraordinary here, a revelation for an actor often typecast in romantic comedies. He conveys a deep sense of alienation, as though the new face is a mask trapping him in someone else's skin. Frankenheimer's direction is masterful, with cinematographer James Wong Howe using wide-angle lenses, extreme close-ups, and distorted perspectives to create a sense of disorientation. The opening credits, designed by Saul Bass, are unsettling in themselves, priming the audience for a story about identity, perception, and the horrors of reinvention. When Seconds was released, it was met with confusion and even hostility. Audiences expecting a straightforward thriller recoiled from its bleak, philosophical tone. Critics were divided, and the film flopped commercially. Yet over time, it found an audience among those drawn to its existential questions. What makes us who we are? Can we truly escape ourselves? And its chilling conclusion still lingers long after the credits roll. Today, Seconds is recognized as a cult classic, its influence visible in later films like Face Off and The Man Who Fell to Earth. It's a haunting parable about the dangers of wishing for a new life without confronting the old one. 7. Targets, 1968. Peter Bogdanovich's Targets is a tense, unflinching look at two forms of horror, one fading, one terrifyingly modern. On one side, there's Byron Orlock, an aging horror movie star played by Boris Karloff, essentially portraying a version of himself. Orlok, disillusioned with the old-fashioned scares of his career, is ready to retire. On the other side, there's a clean-cut young man named Bobby, whose polite exterior hides a chillingly calm mass shooter. The two narratives unfold in parallel. Orlok laments the irrelevance of Gothic horror in a world now scarier than any script, while Bobby methodically prepares for an unprovoked killing spree. The film builds to a shocking climax when their paths cross at a drive-in theater. What makes Target so gripping is its blend of reality and fiction. The film was partly inspired by the real-life Charles Whitman shootings at the University of Texas in 1966. Bogdanovich, then a young critic-turned-director, crafted the story around leftover days on Karloff's contract with producer Roger Corman. The result is a film that feels both immediate and deeply reflective, a commentary on America's changing relationship with violence and media. Karloff delivers one of his most poignant performances, a swan song to his horror legacy. There's a powerful moment where Orlok tells a chilling story from his past, demonstrating that while monsters on screen may fade, the real ones walk among us. Upon release, Targets received praise from critics, but limited box office exposure due to its uncomfortable subject matter. Over time, it became a touchstone for cinephiles and filmmakers, admired for its lean storytelling, tense pacing, and its prescient understanding of modern violence. Today, it stands as a sobering reminder that horror isn't confined to the screen. Sometimes it's waiting in the daylight, wearing an ordinary smile. 8. The President's Analyst, 1967. In the turbulent year of 1967, The President's Analyst emerged as one of the sharpest, most daring political satires of the decade. Written and directed by Theodore J. Flicker, it stars James Coburn as Dr. Sidney Schaefer, a psychotherapist unexpectedly chosen to be the personal analyst to the President of the United States. At first, Schaefer sees it as the ultimate professional honor, until the job's pressures begin to unravel his sanity. From the moment he accepts, Schaefer becomes the target of every intelligence agency in the world, both foreign and domestic, all eager to discover what secrets the president might have confessed. His life turns into a whirlwind of espionage, paranoia, and absurd encounters, from hippie communes to high-tech corporate boardrooms. What sets The President's Analyst apart is its fearless skewering of government surveillance, Cold War paranoia, and corporate power. The film's biggest satirical twist, that the ultimate villain is not a foreign power but a giant telecommunications company, was eerily ahead of its time, predicting debates about privacy and data control that are still raging today. James Coburn is perfect in the lead role, balancing charm, wit, and a growing sense of desperation. The film's tone shifts effortlessly from zany comedy to genuine tension, keeping viewers slightly off balance, much like its protagonist. Upon release, the movie baffled some mainstream audiences with its tonal mix, but it developed a loyal following, particularly among counterculture viewers who recognized its sly critique of authority and consumerism. Today, it's regarded as one of the most intelligent political comedies of its era, a film that dared to question not just the government, but the corporations quietly pulling the strings. Its wit remains razor-sharp, and its message feels even more relevant in the 21st century. Ninth Performance, 1968. Co-directed by Donald Kemmel and Nicholas Roeg, Performance is one of the most enigmatic and controversial films of the 1960s. Part crime thriller, part psychedelic fever dream, it stars James Fox as Chaz, a violent London gangster on the run who hides out in the decaying mansion of a reclusive rock star named Turner, played by none other than Mick Jagger in his acting debut. What begins as a tense standoff between two very different men slowly morphs into something stranger. A psychological game where identities blur, gender roles bend, and reality itself seems to dissolve. The film uses fragmented editing, surreal visuals, and hallucinatory sequences to mirror the characters' shifting states of mind. At the time of its completion, Warner Brothers executives were horrified. They delayed its release for nearly 2 years, cutting scenes and worrying about its explicit content and experimental style. When it finally debuted, reactions were polarized. Some critics dismissed it as incomprehensible, while others hailed it as a masterpiece of countercultural cinema. Over the years, Performance has been embraced as a cult classic, influencing filmmakers like David Lynch and Quentin Tarantino. Jagger's performance is mesmerizing, oscillating between vulnerable and dangerous, while Fox delivers a career-defining turn as a man coming apart at the seams. It's not an easy film, and it's not meant to be. Performance challenges viewers to question identity and power. It feels less like watching a movie and more like falling into a strange, intoxicating dream you can't quite shake when you wake up. For those willing to immerse themselves in its madness, it's an unforgettable ride. 10th. Faces, 1968. John Cassavetes' Faces was a landmark in American independent cinema. Raw, unpolished, and emotionally devastating. Shot in grainy black and white, it follows the disintegration of a marriage between Richard and Maria, as both spouses seek connection outside their relationship. Richard pursues a younger woman, while Maria spends an evening with a smooth-talking man. Cassavetes, working outside the studio system, embraced improvisation and long, unbroken takes, allowing his actors to explore the messy, contradictory emotions of their characters. The result feels uncomfortably real. Arguments erupt without warning. Laughter turns to tears in an instant, and moments of tenderness are undercut by cruelty. The title, Faces, is apt. The camera lingers on expressions, capturing every flicker of emotion. There's no score to cushion the blows, just the raw sound of voices, breathing, and silence. It's a film about loneliness, longing, and the small betrayals that erode love over time. When it premiered, Faces shocked audiences used to polished Hollywood dramas. It earned 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Supporting Actor and Actress for Cassell and Carlin, and cemented Cassavetes' reputation as a pioneer of personal, uncompromising filmmaking. Today, Faces remains a touchstone for indie directors and actors alike. It's not a film you watch for plot twists or spectacle. You watch it for the uncomfortable truths it reveals, truths that still cut deep more than 50 years later. 11. Tokyo Drifter, 1966. Seijun Suzuki's Tokyo Drifter is one of the most visually dazzling and stylistically audacious Yakuza films ever made. On paper, the plot sounds like a standard gangster melodrama. Tetsuya, Phoenix Tetsu. Hondo, a loyal enforcer for a retired gang boss, tries to go straight, only to be pulled back into a web of betrayal, violence, and shifting loyalties. But in Suzuki's hands, this familiar setup became a pop art fever dream. The film explodes with color. Icy blues, searing reds, blinding whites, each hue chosen with painterly precision. Sets are deliberately artificial, turning nightclubs, warehouses, and snowy streets into surreal, almost theatrical spaces. Suzuki defies genre expectations, blending musical numbers, absurd comedy, and stylized shootouts into a narrative that feels both heightened and haunting. At its center is Tetsuya, played by Tetsuya Watari, a man who refuses to betray his moral code, even as the criminal world around him collapses into chaos. His iconic theme song, which he croons throughout the film, becomes both a statement of loyalty and a lament for a way of life that no longer exists. When Tokyo Drifter was released, Nikatsu Studios expected a straightforward crime picture. Instead, Suzuki delivered something closer to a pop art collage, infuriating his bosses but delighting those who saw his boldness. The film's unconventional pacing and surreal visuals baffled many Japanese critics at the time, but it began to develop a cult following, particularly among Western cinephiles who discovered it in the decades that followed. Today, Tokyo Drifter is celebrated as a cornerstone of avant-garde crime cinema. It's not just a Yakuza movie, it's a meditation on loyalty, identity, and the fading glamour of Japan's post-war underworld, all wrapped in some of the most striking visuals of the 1960s. It's proof that even genre films can be unapologetically experimental without losing their emotional core. 12. The Shooting, 1966. Monte Hellman's The Shooting is a Western stripped down to its barest, most enigmatic elements. Shot back-to-back with Ride the Whirlwind in the Utah desert, it stars Warren Oates as Willett Gashade, a former bounty hunter hired by a mysterious woman to guide her across a barren, treacherous landscape. Jack Nicholson plays Billy Spear, a cold-eyed gunman who joins their uneasy journey. On the surface, it's a story of pursuit, though who is chasing whom and why remains deliberately unclear. Hellman pares away exposition, leaving viewers to piece together motivations from cryptic dialogue, tense silences, and sudden bursts of violence. The result is haunting, almost dreamlike, with the vast emptiness of the desert becoming as much a character as the people crossing it. The production was famously low budget, relying on Hellman's resourcefulness and his cast's intensity. Nicholson, not yet a star, brings a dangerous unpredictability to Billy Spear, while Oates's quiet weariness anchors the film. Perkins's performance is equally striking, enigmatic, determined, and withholding just enough to keep the audience guessing. When The Shooting was completed, it didn't receive a proper theatrical release, circulating instead in film festivals and late-night television broadcasts. This scarcity only deepened its cult appeal, with cinephiles and filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino praising its minimalist storytelling and existential tone. In the decades since, The Shooting has been reappraised as a masterclass in genre deconstruction. It's a Western that uses its setting not to tell a straightforward morality tale, but to explore ambiguity, obsession, and the futility of violence. In its starkness, it captures a kind of Western rarely seen in mainstream cinema, one where every unanswered question feels like a ghost in the desert wind. 13. Ride the Whirlwind, 1966. Like The Shooting, Monte Hellman's Ride the Whirlwind was shot quickly, cheaply, and with a small cast, but its tone is more tragic than mysterious. Written by Jack Nicholson, who also stars, it follows three cowhands who stumble upon an outlaw gang after a stagecoach robbery. Mistaken for criminals themselves, they find themselves hunted by a relentless posse. Hellman's direction focuses on the grim inevitability of their fate. There are no sweeping vistas or heroic duels here, just dust, hunger, and the growing awareness that there's no way out. The violence, when it comes, is sudden and unglamorous, stripped of the romanticism that defined many studio westerns. Nicholson's screenplay gives each man a distinct personality, making their doomed journey feel all the more poignant. Cameron Mitchell's character, Vern, serves as the moral anchor, while Nicholson's Wes is impulsive and restless. Their interactions, small gestures of kindness, moments of frustration, carry more weight than the gunfights, underscoring the human cost of being caught on the wrong side of the law. Upon release, Ride the Whirlwind barely made a ripple commercially. But like The Shooting, it found new life through word of mouth and championing by critics. Its refusal to play by the genre's rules, offering no clear villains or triumphant endings, made it stand out to viewers who craved something more grounded and morally complex. Today, it's seen as an essential anti-Western, a film that strips away myth to reveal the quiet desperation underneath. Paired with The Shooting, it cemented Hellman's reputation as a master of minimalist, emotionally resonant storytelling. 14. If, 1968. Lindsay Anderson's If is one of the boldest and most politically charged films of the 1960s. Set in a British boys' boarding school, it follows a rebellious student named Mick Travis, played by Malcolm McDowell in his screen debut, as he clashes with the school's authoritarian hierarchy. At first, his defiance takes the form of small acts of rebellion, skipping chapel, mocking the prefects. But as the film progresses, his resistance grows darker, culminating in a shocking, surreal climax. Anderson blends realism with sudden shifts into fantasy, often without signaling the transition. Scenes slip between color and black and white, creating a disorienting effect that mirrors the tension between conformity and chaos. The school becomes a microcosm for Britain's rigid class structure, with the prefects representing the entrenched elite and the younger boys embodying the restless forces of change. When If premiered, it was embraced by the counterculture as a call to arms against oppressive systems, though its ambiguous ending left room for debate. Was the final act an actual uprising or a symbolic gesture? Anderson never confirmed, allowing the film to remain as provocative now as it was then. The film won the Palme d'Or at Cannes in 1969 and launched McDowell's career, leading to his casting in A Clockwork Orange. It also inspired countless debates about the line between rebellion and violence. Half a century later, If still feels urgent. A sharp reminder of the simmering anger that can build when authority demands obedience without question. Its mix of satire, surrealism, and political critique ensures its place as one of the great cult films of the decade. These 14 films didn't just survive the 60s, they transcended them, becoming treasures for those who seek cinema's hidden corners. They reward patience, curiosity, and an open mind. If you've seen them, you're already part of a rare club. If not, your initiation starts now.